In this new problem from ALEKS College Algebra, we will have the domain and range of a function by looking at its graph. So let's go over here and take a quick look at our notes. And first of all, here I'll introduce a couple of my own terms or definitions. I don't think you will find this in any math book or in the ALEKS explanation, but this is kind of my way of doing this, and I hope it helps you. First of all, I define what I call a domain finder. Well, a domain finder is basically a vertical line that is swept across the graph from left to right. I often use my pen for that. So I'll start my pen and I'll sweep that across from left to right across the graph, and as soon as my pen hits a point on the graph, why then we'll say that we found something. And as soon as our pen leaves the graph, then we'll know that we've lost it, and so then we'll be ready to work with writing the answer for the domain. The range finder, well, in my definition, is simply a horizontal line. Oftentimes I use my pen for that I'm going to sweep from bottom to top. So as long as I come up and I begin to hit something on the graph, I'm finding it, and as long as I run out of the graph, then I'm losing it, and then we'll simply write that down. So these are my ways of doing that. Let's take a look here at this sample problem, and I'll kind of show you how it works. Now, first of all, we start over here on the left side, and we're going to go for the domain. So we're going across. Notice that right now the pen isn't hitting anything. It's not hitting the graph, but as soon as we hit right here, we can imagine that our domain finder is going to go off. It's going to go beep, 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 because we hit something right there. That's going to be the onset of the domain. And so we're going to want to go down here in our x-axis and read this value. And notice that since this is a solid dot, that value is in fact included. And so what we're going to have in the domain then, in our interval notation, is a square bracket. Now, as we sweep on across, notice that in this region we're hitting the graph. So our domain finder, in a sense, is still going off beep, 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 beep. And as we get over here, notice that it's going to run out. We're going to get here and it's going to quit going off because we have run out of the graph at that point. So notice that that graph goes up to, but does not include that point of the domain. And so in our interval notation, we'll have to show that end as an open end to the interval. So that's how you find the domain. Now on the range, well, once again, my system here is to start at the bottom and begin sweeping up. And so as we come up here, we're not hitting anything. Our rangefinder is silent until we hit this point right there, when suddenly our rangefinder goes off and goes beep, 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 beep. And so we realize then that we have hit a value of the range. So we would read this on the y-axis over here, and notice that since this dot is colored in, we would in fact have a closed end to our interval there. As we run on up through the graph, obviously we continue to find a range in here until this point, when suddenly we run out of it. At this particular point, there is no value then in that range, and so we're going to run off there, and we'll notice that we read that on our y-axis over here, and we'd have to show that end as also a closed interval. Now they can do these in various different ways, but let's look at the one that they present us over here in ALEKS. This is very much like our example one. And so what we can imagine doing here is running across with our vertical line across from left to right. This is our domain finder. In fact, we can see we're first going to hit down here. So as we go across, we can see it's going to beep, beep, beep right there. Our first value of the domain, read it on the x-axis, is -3. Now notice that that value is included, so that means we're going to have a closed interval, a square bracket on the left-hand side, and as we run out of it, we're going to have a round one on the right-hand end of this. So we're going to have a square round combination, which is that one right there. Okay, now as we come in, you can see here that we do in fact include the -3, but as we run out at this value, notice here that it runs up to, but does not include the 2. So our domain finder stops going off here as we hit the 2. In fact, the end of that is not included, so that interval is open. Okay, let's do the rangefinder. Now, once again, what we're going to do in the rangefinder, in case you forgot here, go back here and look at our notes, is we're going to sweep up. Our rangefinder is this horizontal line that's swept from bottom to top. It's going to hit here for the first time. And once again, we'll read our first y value. So back here, we're going to come up, come up, come up. We hit it first right here. And of course, notice that that's at -2. It is in fact solid there. It is included. So we're going to have a square bracket there and an open bracket there. So once again, our range is going to be square followed by open, which would be this one. We're going to, on the y value, notice the y value commences here at -2, and then we run out of the y up here. We zip, zip, zip all the way up to this top point here, which is going to be 5 on the y-axis. So those are domains and ranges. Let's check that, and let's probably do another one of these. Let's do one more of these problems. See what else now. Basically, they've come up with about the same thing. We're going to have a solid one here. So as we come across on our domain finder, the first value of the domain here is at -4. And notice that that is included. Our last value of the domain is going to be +3. This one's closed, this one's open, so I want the square round combination, which would be this one. We're going to go with -4 and 3. So be sure on the domain that you're reading the x-axis. So that's going to be -4 and 3 on the domain. For the range, once again, we're going to sweep up from bottom to top. Our first value of the range is at -4, which is square. Top value is at 5, which is round, so we need the square round again. And so we're going to have here our -4, and then at the top 5. And so that seems to be about the extent of what they do on these problems. This is domain and range from the graph in ALEKS College Algebra.